Hey you guys, my name is Crystal and I'm on staff here at Orange. And before that, I was a high school teacher, but my favorite job is for the last 16 years, I've been a youth ministry volunteer. And for 15 of those 16 years, I've carried an embarrassing secret about being a volunteer. I didn't tell anybody until about a year ago, and now I'm gonna tell all of you. See, my secret is this: when it comes to youth ministry, I don't wanna show up. And I know some of you are like, Crystal, there are days where we all don't want to show up. But I don't mean just I don't want to show up on a day. I mean I don't want to show up ever. I mean about an hour before our weekly service, something in me at a gut level says don't go. About a month before our summer camp, something in my brain starts begging me to find any excuse not to be there. I don't know, about 7 days out from a weekend retreat, I start coming up with all the reasons in my mind where this time would be a good time to skip the weekend. I don't know what it is, and honestly, it's a little embarrassing, not only because I've been volunteering for so long, but because I literally make resources for small group leaders as a living, and still, when it comes to my own group, the group that God has entrusted to me, the group I signed up for, most days, I just have this gut instinct that begs me to find any reason not to show up. This is true for me as a volunteer. It was true when I was leading volunteers. It's true on stage and off stage. And while I feel weird admitting it, what I've learned from talking to so many youth ministry volunteers and so many youth workers like you is that this urge to bail right before game time, right before showtime, it's more common than any of us are talking about. Now, why does that happen? I have no idea, but here's what I'm sure about. The flip side of that is also true. See, when I actually go to the weekend services, I always leave saying, this was the best part of my week. When I get home from the week-long camp, I'm so thankful that I got to go. And when I finish up with a weekend retreat, I know that it's gonna be one of my best memories of the year. Leading teenagers is one of the best parts of my life, and still, showing up to play is one of the hardest things I do. If you're a youth worker, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're a volunteer, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And yet, consistently showing up is where the game is won or lost. Consistently being here to play is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that we do for teenagers. I think that's true for a few reasons. First, being here consistently is how you know a teenager. My friend Kristen, she tells this great story about being a middle school volunteer. She missed 2 weeks of youth group and she shows up and an 8th grade girl says to her, I don't even know if I can talk to you anymore because you're never here. She was like, 2 weeks is not that long. But the truth is 2 weeks is a lot in the life of a middle schooler. I mean, 2 weeks is the difference between everybody has this new app and it's awesome and I love it, and now everybody has it and it's stupid and I hate it and there's a new app. 2 weeks is the difference between I kind of like this person, I think I have a crush, we're talking, now we're not talking, now I like somebody else. 2 weeks is a lot in the life of a middle schooler, and research tells us that around the time puberty starts, a teenager's brain is being rewired at the same rate and with the same intensity as when their brain was forming when they were 2 years old. So if we miss 2 weeks in a row, there's a good chance a middle schooler thinks differently now than they did before. Here's another thing. Being here consistently builds trust. When a leader like you or I becomes familiar, it puts that leader in a different category. When a leader is around enough to know a kid's story, to know their family, to know their younger brother's name, to know when they have a crush, to know when they don't have a crush, to know when tryouts happen, to know what matters to them, it moves that leader from being just another person to being a main character in a kid's life story. And that gives credibility to everything else we say. Not only that, but sometimes the trust we earn by showing up can be a matter of life or death. In recent years, the groups who work towards suicide prevention have adopted this phrase, I'll see you tomorrow. It's just a simple phrase that cues or reminds a teenager's brain that it's important to be here tomorrow because someone is expecting to see them, somebody's hoping to see them, somebody's wanting to see them. And as I hear that phrase, I can't help but think about how important it is that we show up today so that they believe us when we say we'll be here waiting to see them tomorrow. You see, it may feel like nothing is happening when we show up on a weeknight or on a Sunday night or on a Zoom call or in a parking lot, but when we choose to be here for a kid, we're gaining the credibility for everything we say to be trusted. And here's the thing. We only have so many chances each year to do that. I mean, research tells us that the average youth ministry meets about 40 times a year, and that the average kid, maybe even the best kids, attend only half the time. That means you and I have 20 shots this year to become familiar enough or close enough with a teenager so that what we say to them can matter. And finally, being here consistently will shape how a kid sees God. See, in our culture, teenagers don't have a lot of examples of permanent relationships. I mean, families change shape, you know that. And around 9th grade, friend groups start to regroup. And as they get older, dating relationships that felt so permanent in the beginning, well, they're not permanent in the end. And that was true before quarantine. I mean, maybe more than any other generation, this generation knows what it's like for friends and mentors and extended family to be cut off with no warning. So when that's all you've experienced, it's hard to imagine God being any different. I mean, if we want teenagers to believe in a God that is lasting and trustworthy and always here, they're gonna have to see that somewhere. And the best place to see it is in relationship with God's people who have committed to be lasting and trustworthy and always here. So what does that mean in your church or in your context? Well, maybe it means trying a different model this year. Maybe you've been trying to do this youth ministry thing on your own for so long, and you know, because you're a human being, we're all limited on the amount of time and the amount of energy and the amount of capacity we have to lead other people. It's impossible to be here for many students. And maybe this is the year that you invite some other adults to come join you. Maybe it means we make a bigger ask of the volunteers who are serving in our ministries. Maybe that 1-year commitment that seems so ridiculously huge should become a 3-year commitment for middle school leaders or a 4-year commitment for high school leaders. I know that sounds like a lot, but I just imagine 2 years from now, there are going to be some teenagers in our ministries who need a relationship with somebody who knew them today, somebody who knew what it was like for their family during this time. Maybe it means rethinking our definition of youth work entirely. Maybe it means we stop looking at our job descriptions as if the most important thing that happens is 1 hour, 1 day a week in one room at our church. Maybe we start planning for and measuring and evaluating and celebrating relationships as if they really are the thing that matters most. Because if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we need people more than we thought. The relationships matter more than we imagined. And that's true for teenagers too. Look, when it comes to youth ministry, I don't know why so many of us feel that urge to not show up. Sometimes I think it's just that we know how much is on the line when we do show up. Important things are always going to make us nervous. And when it's game time, when it's go time, when it's time to step up as a leader, we may always feel the temptation to shrink back. I don't know what's going to make that feeling go away. And if you do, please tell me. But what I know for sure is we've got to show up every week anyway. Too much is at stake not to. And in a time where nothing seems predictable, you and I have the privilege and the responsibility of showing up and finding other adults who will show up so often that we demonstrate for teenagers a God who can always be counted on. The truth is, the most important thing we will do for teenagers this year is not a sermon. It's not an event. And it's not a game. The most important thing you and I will do for teenagers this year is be here consistently. The most important thing we can choose is to choose to be here to play today so that they know we'll be here when they need us tomorrow.